Good morning and welcome to the AM AI. And I sent Justin this link. I will fully disclose, I purposely did not read it because I wanted us to be on the same page for this one.
All right, let's take a look. I saw the headlines about this over the weekend, but I was traveling and I have not been able to read this either. So we're going to read it and understand it together here. This is the EU AI Act. Reaction tech experts say that the world's first AI law is historic but bittersweet. In a world first, the EU's passed legislation to regulate artificial intelligence. But while some argue it does not go far enough, others say it could hurt companies with additional constraints. This is the case for every law that ever gets passed. Those are the two arguments. So they've rushed to spin out rules and warnings to tech companies. I should actually put this in ChatGPT and have it quickly summarize this for me. So we're
Actually,
going
go
to do
ahead.
that.
Yeah, why don't you
We're
try
going
that?
to just do that. That way we don't have to read this whole thing.
We're so lazy.
Remember, folks, we don't read anymore. That's for suckers. So we just go summarize the important parts of this article.
Also, give me a ELF 5 explain.
Oh, I should have probably said that.
That's all right. We can see what it says.
That's okay. So yeah, we're gonna ask ChatGPT to do this, but this is AI legislation. You can see more and more of this happening over time, and it's one of those things that I actually feel very bearish about. I don't think that regulators are going to be able to keep up with this.
I think it's a bad idea, and here's why I think it's a bad idea. If Europe puts this into place, what they're essentially saying is, we know we're behind Silicon Valley and we want to be further behind.
Yep.
If America puts it in place, what we're saying is, hey, we know we're currently potentially in front of China, but we want to be behind China. There is no chance that you can put this in place and remain a world economic superpower.
Yep. Yep. What's interesting about this is that, like, and I don't know about the actual article itself. Now I feel like I need to read some of this actual article because I asked ChatGPT to summarize it. What's interesting is it doesn't actually tell me anything that this act actually does. It just talks about how it is a historic thing, but it doesn't actually talk about like what the act says.
And I'm not sure that anyone here actually understands it enough.
The article also might not talk about that. It probably just like hand wavy yada yada yada. Hey, there's legislation. Yada, something happens here.
Why don't you just Google it real quick?
And what is it called? The EU AI Act. Let's see.
By the way, like, I love the number of uppercase letters that you have to go into that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, here I don't really want to click on a sponsor link. What does it? Okay, so this is from the European Union here. Why do we need rules? A risk-based approach. So yada yada yada. Not really sure what that means exactly, but it probably explains it in this article.
And this is the irony here is the only one I think this really hurts is probably the countries that impact it, right? But inside those countries, what it really does is it really stifles startups.
Yeah.
Because large companies can figure out a way to deal with the legislation. It's almost always beneficial to a large company because it creates larger barriers to entry. And those barriers to entry are what have made capitalism work, reducing those, right?
Yep.
Like it. So this is, by the way, like I am a capitalist. I don't mind saying that. I was not everyone necessarily in my extended family of Europeans is capitalist. But I think capitalism has been what spurred the great increase in the quality of life.
Sure.
And Our World in Data. I think we talked about that one time, right? If you look at Our World in Data, one of my favorite websites on the planet, and you can just see the quality of life improvements globally over the last 150 years or so, and the acceleration of the quality of life has been primarily due to the capitalism.
Yep. Yeah.
What happens when capitalism ends because of this? Oh gosh, this stuff is so cool. It's so scary.
Right? Yeah, that's really interesting. I do agree with you. I think that I think we're in a weird place when it comes to regulation and AI because it's reasonable to think that there has to probably be some degree of regulation at some point somewhere, but it's really hard with this kind of stuff because especially early on where you don't really know what the trajectory of this is going to be, and we're in that very early arms race kind of phase of AI, and competitiveness is really important, especially with something that's this game changing for societies, right? I mean, this is something that could potentially have a massive impact on GDP for whatever country nails it, right? And so there's like a lot at stake here. And early legislation, while I understand where that thought is coming from, is going to make you less competitive and slower. And at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, right now, speed matters. Speed is what matters.
But by the way, we're both technologists at heart, and MVPs are what we love. So get the shit out the door, right?
Out the dope.
But even Facebook changed its mantra from ship fast and break things to like, hey, maybe don't ship fast and break things over time, and that's actually the difference between being a startup and being an established company.
Yep.
And so anyway, I think there is this balancing act, and I don't know where. I'm actually glad I'm not a legislator right now, because I would really I would be petrified to make the wrong mistake on this stuff in either direction, right?
Yep.
And so hey, EU, congratulations for trying to do something. It looks like from this approach, you may be trying to do this in an intelligent way to say evaluate the risk level of the AI before applying legislation or mandatory things towards it.
Yep.
And it looks like that has to do, but the challenge here is, what do you consider high risk, right?
Right.
And I think that's really hard to say.
Oh,
Discriminatory practices, like, dude, that's so easy to inject on accident. And by the way, the great example, do you remember the Kinect from Microsoft?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Right.
man, I've not heard that. Golly, I've not heard that in forever.
So the Kinect was incredibly discriminatory. I don't know if you remember this, but they did not have enough African Americans on the testing team. And so what happened is, when they got it out in the real world, people with darker skin had a very hard time using it because it was primarily tested by a bunch of nerds.
I do remember this. Yes.
And so were they purposely discriminatory? And I think that's the challenge. Purposeful discrimination is very different than accidental discrimination.
Right.
If you take Reddit and grab their data, you're going to be discriminatory. Are you doing it on purpose? No, but you will be, right? Which, by the way, side note, Reddit's IPOing, and you know what one of their primary sources of revenue is right now?
What's that?
They are shipping their whole data set to a bunch of AI companies, and they're making like 300 or 400 million a year from that.
No kidding. Wow. Data is the new oil.
One of their primary sources of info is the data. Anyway, this was off topic and kind of political, so we should put a political warning on it probably. But it's important for us to realize that legislation will happen, and the countries that do it are probably going to hurt themselves more than the countries that don't do it.
It's such a balancing act, right? I mean, we've seen this with GDPR. The EU's already slowing themselves down with GDPR. I get it. I understand where the motivation comes from. I'm not saying that it is flawed legislation from a purpose standpoint.
Time out. I was in England last week.
Yep.
What a royal pain in the ass.
Oh, I bet. I've not been overseas since GDPR was passed. So, but I hear people say it is a nightmare to use the internet.
Every time I hit even Google, this massive pop-up shows up, right? Like,
is that right?
Every single freaking time.
Yeah. The ergonomics will end up killing it. And yeah, that's the problem. I mean, this is the double-edged sword of passing legislation like that, right? You're just not going to remain as competitive, unfortunately.
And it's because, like, I'm from the US, and we tend to say no, 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 and so you keep showing it. Over there, everyone's just basically given up. I was like, okay.
Because I mean, like, at some point when you're just continuing to get beat down, you just lay down and take it.
Yeah. All right. This has been an AMAI legal / the end of the world,
Political
political something. Have a good day.